All right, guys, welcome to Awesomeness Hour. It's been a little bit of a cluster to get here, but we've got our first, what I like to consider bipolar guest, and I mean that in the best way. Oh, not you, it's me that's bipolar, is that I was telling Lori this today. I've created such a mental I'm on Facebook Live with you guys. Block without being able to understand, but like being able to say your name correctly, that even when I try, I can't do it.
Oh boy.
Come on, try.
No, I mean, even when I try, like you can say it. All right, Marissa, you say it, and I won't be able to say it back.
Kirsten. Oh, sorry.
No, you can both be Marissa. See, that's what I'm saying. She doesn't even know who she is anymore. So here, I always want to, I say Kirsten.
There, you did it.
Kristen.
Nope.
Courtney. I called her Connie one day. I know it's a complete disaster, and it's 100% my fault.
You said it. It was the second one.
I know, but I can't say it repetitively. Like, you know what I mean? Like in especially on the fly, like when I'm looking at the list, just won't come out.
Okay.
So I had to give you a nickname, and I feel horrible about it most of the time. Sometimes I don't feel bad about it at all. But anyway, we've got our, oh, hold on. I forgot to fix her name. Just so I know.
Oh, we got a comment saying that they can't hear.
Oh, good Lord. Hold on.
They can hear you.
They can hear me, but they can't hear you guys. Oh, you know why? Because I'm gonna have to get out of here. Let me do this. Hold on, guys. Thanks for saying that. Go here. I'm telling you, this is a giant. Okay. Can they hear me now, Marissa? Give Marissa a thumbs up, guys, if you can hear now. I'll even put this right in the middle.
Did I say something while I mean, hopefully, maybe that's why, because they could only hear you.
Well, no, I think now, because I did have my headphones in, so they wouldn't be able to hear anything. So I think that they could probably hear us now. You guys just chat amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. I'm going to try this one more time. Sometimes when Facebook has an audience, it likes to show up and do what it's supposed to do. And this way you guys can see what happens actually when I say that I try to go to Facebook and it won't let me. So it goes here, and then this little circle is going to pop up. It's going to go around and around and around. And if it doesn't pop up by now, it means it's not going to pop up. So normally it makes about 2 circles, and then this little box comes up and you get to do all this other fun stuff. So Facebook's just not going to allow it to happen today. So
that's okay.
Let's move on. So tell us, let me find you guys again now that I've lost you. I've lost all my screens now.
We're watching.
This is a giant.
I can see you.
This is a giant shit show. Are you kidding me? Here we are. Okay, we're back.
Very good.
Okay, tell us, how did you get to the group? How did you find us? How did you find me? How did you find the studio? Like, what are you doing here? How did you get here?
Well, I, for years, have worked with Christy and Amity and Holly, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody who's also works where we all worked. And Christy and I had been really good friends for a long time, and also Amity and Holly. And I saw her start this program, and Christy and I had been on diets together before, with moderate degrees of success. We never did the same diet. We would just diet at the same time, doing our own thing. Right. Sometimes more successful than others. But then usually we kind of go back to whatever our default was. And so she started this program, I think because Holly and Amity were doing it. And she just started melting away. And she told me this was different. And at first I really did think she was in some sort of a cult, but I really wanted in on whatever the magic potion was. I was like, there's what are we chewing this time? Are these like those Arbonne toffees? I mean, like, what are we chewing? What are we drinking? Is it stuff from Sweden? Like, what? And she's like, no, you just eat this stuff and then you work out all the time. And I'm like, well, that sounds way too, And so she's like, you got to do it. but at the time, probably for the first 6 months she was in the program, I was probably at my very lowest point physically ever in my life. I was at my heaviest too. I was not a heavy person growing up. My family tends to be very overweight, but I was not overweight. I was very cognizant of that. And so until I was in my late 20s, I very much weighed somewhere in the 125 to 135 range. But when I started working and got a desk job and moved in with my significant other and started having kids, it just crept on and on and on and on. And I had 2 kids, and then I turned 40, and then all the hacks that I had kind of used all my life to stay in a particular zone stopped working. And I was also in that place because, so I had a chronic health issue since I was 15. I have endometriosis, and I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but basically cells that are supposed to stay in your uterus escape, and they attach all over your body. And then once a month when you get an estrogen signal, those cells blow up, and whatever they're attached to, they tear. And so I basically 25% to 35% of my life was miserable physically since I was 15 years old. Like I would be debilitated. I could not work out. By the time I was right before Thrive, I was anemic. I had all kinds of physical issues from battling this sort of condition my whole life. And so I ended up scheduling a surgery in December, about 6 weeks before I started Thrive. And it was radical, but I took care of 95% of what causes that chronic condition. I still have some residual issues from it, but those cells, when they escape, they attach not only to like your reproductive organs, but they attach to nerve endings. They attach to the outside of your intestines. I know I had some that attached to like nerves in my legs. And so once a month, I would just be completely like knocked down as far as being physically active. And so that just compounded itself for years. And I got to a point where I just really did not recognize like who I was and knew I had to do something. And this was working for Christy, and she and I we're similar in a lot of ways. And I was like, if she can do it, I can do it. So that's kind of a long story about how I ended up at Thrive.
No, I love it. What was because you said you'd been thin or in shape your whole life. When you came into the program, like what was that your heaviest weight you'd been or around your heaviest? Okay. How much weight have you lost from the beginning to like your lowest point in the program?
I have lost 47 pounds since I started.
So right around 50 pounds. Have you ever lost 50 pounds? I mean, have you ever needed to lose 50 pounds before in your life? Probably not.
No, I have needed to lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds. Okay. But I don't know if before I got to the sort of last phase that and I still need to lose a little bit more. I'm not done. But this is the biggest chunk of it for me. But yeah, this was as heavy and as out of shape as I had ever been in my entire life is when I started Thrive. So true low point.
I got 2 questions. So the first day you walk into the studio, do the workout, like it all starts like in your mind, are you thinking, okay, like I got this, or in your mind you're thinking, So what was your thought process?
So I signed up literally, I want to say about 48 hours before your phase 2 began, because I was still I was in full surgical recovery in January. So I want to say phase 2 started it was the 6th or 7th of February. Yeah. And so one night, as I had promised myself, and I had told Christy, as soon as I'm physically able to join this program, I will do it. So I talked myself out of it about 3 nights in a row. And then one night about midnight, probably with a bag of chips, I logged on, I went through your website again, and I just signed up because I knew if I paid for it, I would go. Yeah. So I did, and Marissa called me the next day, and I told her, I'm like, okay, I really don't know what I've done. And she's like, it's okay. And I'm like, I don't know what I can do, because I had spent the last 6 weeks just working on walking around my cul-de-sac. Yeah. That was a feat for me. So I got up, I got in my car that morning at like 4:30 in the morning, and I cried in my driveway. I was like, what have I done? Oh, well, it's only $350. I'll live. But I literally had to, like, when I drove to Thrive the first morning, like I was like, okay, I'll drive to the gate in my neighborhood and I can turn around. And then I got to the gate and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go up to the stoplight. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to get on the freeway. But if I get to the parking lot, I can still go home. And I literally had to do that all the way to my first workout. And I did that for probably 6 weeks. Like every morning I was like, okay, just go to the gate. Okay, just go to the stoplight. Okay, just go to the parking lot. And then at some point I realized I wasn't doing that anymore, but it was not like, it was hard.
Yeah. Did you think it was a cult the first day that you came?
No, I was like, oh, shit. I'm just going to work out and eat right. Oh my God, there's no magic chewies or drink or, yeah. No, once I was like, oh, this is just a lot of hard work. But it was good, and I was motivated to keep going back because I saw people of like all levels, all shapes, all sizes, like super fit people doing this, and people who seemed like they were maybe 6 months ahead of me. And then I saw people that I could look at and say, okay, if they can do this, I can do that. And if I keep doing this, maybe I'll get to where I'm seeing some other people be.
Yeah. And fast forward to that place, like where you are now, in comparison to where you are when you started, like the things that you do, like the workouts, the volume, the pace, the everything. Could you see yourself where you are now back then?
I don't know if I had the ability to look that far ahead because I was still very much in like it was almost like a mental survival mode. So I really was living in 24-hour increments. And all I could think of when I very first started was just keep going. Like maybe someday I'll get to, if it's between A and Z, I'm like, maybe someday I'll get to G. But I didn't really think that far ahead. And then one day I just found myself doing more and more and more. And then I remember finishing a couple of workouts that I would never have been able to finish the first day. Like never. Yeah. And finishing them and being like, I can't believe I just did that. Right. So,
That's fun though, right? It's exciting.
It is fun. And it made me feel really, really good about myself when I had done those. When I first started and I would see what you put on the board and you'd be like, okay, there'd be 10 things and I would get to like 3.5 after an hour. I was like, what am I doing here? And so, now I can get to 9 out of 10 or whatever. But yeah, you definitely progress if you just keep going.
Yeah, I think the consistency and the commitment and just because listen, there were probably days when you could have easily talked yourself out of it.
Oh yeah.
Right. And not went back and not ever, and just been like, screw it. Like this just isn't worth it. Are you glad you didn't do that?
Yes.
Okay.
It totally changed my life. And I don't mean that to sound sappy, but like I can now recognize myself again. I'm doing things that I used to love to do that I had stopped doing. I just, like I said, I had really become almost unrecognizable to myself in certain aspects of my life. And it was really hard to look at that person. And I literally, it was in a place where when I was younger had said, I'll never be there. That's never going to happen to me. I'm never going to be 70 pounds overweight. I'm never going to be like some of the people that in my family that I knew I was genetically linked to. Yeah. And then I woke up one morning and I was like, well, that's not how I planned this. I didn't wake up one morning and it happened, but I realized it.
Yeah. It's like that whole suddenly thing. You're like, what the hell? Like, how'd this happen? Like, and it's just there. And that's, for me, that's the coolest thing about the entire process and the program itself. Like, I love the weight loss and I think that's all fun. And I think it's necessary, it's beneficial, it has to happen. But I also think that's like just the side effect of you just like starting to come back into your own or into finding the new you or the old you or whatever you it is you're looking for. Like when you start to find yourself back in that groove or feeling better, I mean, the weight loss is almost like it just happens naturally.
Yeah. And then there was a time and I call it kind of being in the middle, where I think when you start off, it's like starting a race, but it's more like a cross country race. You start off, there's all these people at the finish line, they're cheering you on.
Yeah.
And it's, you're really excited. There's a lot of support, but then the longer you run your race, you're always going to find yourself in the woods at some point where there's nobody except maybe the guy with the clipboard making sure you're not cheating. That might be you, Jay. And you just have to keep running, because there's not going to be, it's not going to feel the same as when you started, but it's very easy to kind of like just stop there and be like, do I want to keep going? Do I want to turn around?
And that's where most people stop, if I'm being 100% honest with you. Like, they get to a certain point and two things happen. They either say, gosh, like I've worked so hard and I'm only this far. Or they say, oh my gosh, I've worked so hard, look where I am now. But it is like, it's almost like the newness wears off of it, or the shine wears off of it, and you have to find that internal drive. It's like the better you get, the harder it is to get a little bit better.
Yeah, and I can already recognize in myself that probably this last 20 pounds is going to be harder than the first 50.
100%. And it's like the old adage of, the best athletes in the world, they obviously want to keep improving, and they do improve and they continue to improve. But those small increments, like, for the best football player, the best quarterback in the world, for him to get better, it's not a giant, he doesn't get exponentially better. He just gets this much better, but that makes a big difference. You know what I mean? But it's really difficult for him to it's much easier to get this much better than it is to get this much better when you get to that certain level. And that's kind of where a lot of you guys are at, is like, you're just trying to like finish, find that formula that gets you to the place where you initially wanted to start. And then your next goal will be even further away than that. Like, you'll keep growing and keep expanding. Nobody ever wants to just get good enough, right? They always want to find that next level of who they are. So that's an awesome story. I mean, I knew a little bit, most of that. There's some little bits and pieces in there that I was even unaware of, which I think are pretty cool. And I'm glad you stuck with us. I'm glad you joined a cult, so you can always put that on your resume. Been a member of a cult before. What has been the one thing, like outside of the weight loss and the workouts and the food and whatever? What's been like one thing that has been different about this than the things you've tried in the past? Because like you said, you and Christy have tried like every potion, lotion, drink, or program or whatever. Like, what has been the one thing that you could say was different about this?
The support from the group, like you don't have that when you just pick up another program and start doing it. And then, so that is incredible. And to see people, like, to be able to watch other people do the program and see, like, you are going to have times where you make massive progress, and then you might have some times where you plateau, but you just keep going. And when you can kind of see people modeling that, then when you hit those spots where it would be easy to quit, that if you just keep going, it's going to keep working. And that, and the sustainability of it. I knew years ago that like carbs were not my friend. And when I was in college, my mom, who had always been a little bit overweight and sometimes a lot overweight, did this diet called the Carbohydrate Addicts Diet. And it was kind of weird. It had to do with dividing your plate into thirds, and you had to eat in a certain order. And so I tried, and she had massive success with it. And so I read the book, and I figured out, I'm like, oh, okay, some of the parts about being like addicted to or resistant to carbohydrates, like they're just kind of your napalm, that made sense to me on a scientific level. So then I tried Atkins, and that worked for me, but it's not sustainable. I never thought that the keto, I never did keto, and I never was attracted to keto because I can't physically imagine ingesting that much fat.
Right, yeah, I agree.
And so also I knew because when I was in college, my mom had open heart surgery. And following that surgery, her doctors put her on a particular diet, and it was a low fat, low calorie diet. So, my dog is here. Everything in our house overnight was thrown out, and everything was low fat butter. That's not even a thing. It's like fake butter and low fat bread. So it's this whole summer with my mom recovering. Of course, we're all being supportive, but I'm 23 years old and I'm starving. Like, I've never been so hungry in my life. I'd make a sandwich and 45 minutes later, I would need another meal. And so when my mom went on this diet, I gained like 10 pounds that summer, and I have never been so hungry in my life. So I was like, this doesn't work. Like, I don't care what your doctor says, you do what you're going to do, but I'm just getting fat and starving. And so I realized that the carbohydrate element had to be a key to whatever I did, but yours is the first program that's sustainable in terms of what you can eat and the net carbs, like the 50 net carbs that you can have. And so that's the difference, is the support and the sustainability.
Awesome. Support and sustainability. I like that. Let's shift gears a little bit. We are, I mean, obviously in a weird, we talked about a little bit about this before we jumped on our makeshift live here. What is, and I've asked this question to everybody, so you may have already kind of like preempted some answers. What is the one thing you've learned about yourself since this whole this whole opportunity 2020 has come about?
That I am okay being alone, but I'm not okay being bored. That's like, I don't do well being bored, but it doesn't necessarily have to do because I can't be out with other people. Like, I do miss people and I miss going places, but it's not so much that thing that I miss. It's that I need to be doing something, whether it's something creative or something that stimulates my brain, or if I am just sort of left to my own devices and I get bored, I will gravitate to my pantry and will end up in the refrigerator. I wish I was the kind of person that's like, oh, you're bored, I'm going to go out and jog around the block, but that I'm still have not rewired that portion of myself. So as long as I don't mind the solitude, but I have to find meaningful ways to spend my day, or I become very not productive or destructive. And I don't know what else have I learned about myself. That I don't panic. I've never panicked in all of this, and that's always kind of been something I knew about myself. But then the flip side of that is when I do feel myself starting to really worry about something because I don't panic, then I actually really worry about it, because I'm like, oh, I'm worried about it. That means that, you know, I'm normally a person who doesn't react to this stuff. Then it can actually become a little bit weighty. And I'm like, oh, if I'm worrying, maybe we really are in deep shit. And I've learned to reel myself back from that.
Okay. No, that's good. Those are two really good self-awareness things. I'm going to go ahead and ask the follow-up question. I was going to ask a question in the middle, but so based on that, like, you know, not being able to be bored or whatever, what have you taken advantage of? Like, what are some of the opportunities or things you've either taken advantage of or created? Have they been around that, like keeping yourself busy or from not getting bored, or have there been something completely, totally different that you've taken advantage of?
Well, I always in my mind have a list of about 2,000 projects I want to do, but generally I've been kind of letting life and just the busyness of life get in the way. And so I actually did some of those projects. I tried, I posted on the Thrive page, I did a book art project.
I saw that.
I literally have been telling myself I want to do that for 2 years. I grew up playing the piano and my kids are in piano lessons, but I haven't actively been playing. So I have gone back to music, and I'm I've taught myself how to play like half the Greatest Showman soundtrack, mostly so that I wouldn't spend that time eating.
I mean, that's a really cool way to spend your time.
Yeah, and I've done, I did a little art project the other day. I took something that I had from my old house that I kept saying I want to do something with it, but the colors don't work. And so I spray painted it out and changed some different pieces of it out, and now it's going to be in my entryway. So I've done a lot of the things that I had on my if I had time list. So yeah. That's how I've kind of been keeping busy.
That's awesome.
So awesome.
I think all those are really cool. Marissa, do we have any questions before I continue to banter on?
Yeah, we have some.
Yeah.
Let me go. Bobby Jane asks, Kirsten, how did you get Coach Tony on board for Jay Approved?
Well, it's kind of funny, kind of not funny, but I basically told him that it was after one of my posts, I told him it's really hard for me to keep eating the way I'm supposed to be eating when everybody else in the house is basically on a food holiday. And I just told him I was really struggling because, you know, normally I make the kids' lunches in the morning. He takes care of himself. He's gone for the day. And then I do my thing food-wise, and then I make dinner for us. And it's much easier to stay on track when that's the family schedule. But now there's 4 people in our house at all times. The pantry seems like it's open a lot. My kids are making themselves food. They're like, hey, what should we make, you know, for fun for dinner tonight? And it had just gotten to a point where I told him, I said, it still makes, I know it shouldn't, but it still makes me feel left out when everybody is making a tray of nachos and I'm having my salad. And so I was just honest that that was hard for me. And he said that if it would help, that he would basically eat with me for the foreseeable future. And so he's super competitive too. So I had him download my Fitness Pal, and I'm like, okay, then if you will eat with me, will you track it and log it? And he was like, okay. So he actually put in he's sort of starting today, but to test it, he put all of his food into my Fitness Pal from yesterday. And then he freaked out because he thought he'd eaten 5,000 calories. And I said, you didn't, you put something in wrong, but you probably did eat 3,000 calories. And so he had a foot-long sandwich from Jimmy John's with all the bread. Yeah. And he's like, shit, that's 1,100 calories. That's like most of my food for the day. And I'm like, mm-hmm. So then he was like, okay. So he's been kind of playing with it. But mostly it was to support me.
That's all. You know, I think that's real. I want to just touch on that. I think that is super cool and awesome of him to volunteer to do that. And I think it was awesome of you to say, hey, this is what I need. But those are the two. I mean, that is how the process should work, right? Hey, spouse, significant other, friend, blah, blah, blah. This is what I need from you. And the reciprocal nature is absolutely, let me help you. So I think that is a perfect example of how that whole entire process should go. So fantastic. Kudos all around. What else we got?
We got Holly says, I want to hear about Courtney's decision to make a big career change.
Yeah, let's hear it, because you've made a huge career change, and so let's hear how that all came about.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, so for 18 years, I had the same job I had out of law school, and it started out as my dream job, and I really loved it. Over time, though, it just wasn't my dream job anymore, and that is a lot of factors that went into that. Being a mom was one of them. It took away my ability to, you know, do something 23 hours a day, which was how I liked to do that particular job, because I found that I couldn't be a good mom and do my job the way I used to do my job. That's just me personally, the way I operate. I get a little OCD about things. And so if I wanted to work on a project, I wouldn't be satisfied at work if I hadn't given it 120%, but I wasn't good at scaling that back and balancing that with my new, you know, motherhood. And so when my first child was born, I scaled back and started working part-time, and I found a really good balance for several years to do that. And then I started in a new unit about 3 or 4 years before I joined Thrive. And I think I was pretty good at it, but it was very stressful. It was very hard. And I was not really working part-time just based on the workload in the unit. And I really was miserable. I didn't love it anymore. I was not having fun. Even though I was technically on paper part-time and I was, you know, balancing everything, I was really working full-time and getting paid for only half the time, and then still trying to be a mom to kids in travel sports. And, you know, I was basically had just too much on my plate, and I felt like I wasn't doing anything particularly well. And at the same time, I was gaining weight. My medical condition was like terrible. I was not taking care of that. I was just exhausted all the time, and I had stopped enjoying pretty much anything. Like, I didn't enjoy going to my kids' sporting events on the weekend, which I totally enjoy now, because all I could think of was all the things I needed to do at home, all the things I still needed to do at work, and none of those things, like, in the work stuff, I was like, this is pretty miserable. So I knew that I needed to make a change. I had no idea how to do it. And then the stars just kind of aligned, and my husband got a promotion at work that took him basically sort of out of the loop in our personal life for about a year. And I just knew that, I knew financially I could do it. It would be an adjustment, but I just knew that I had to find a way to be happy again. And so I quit my one and only dream job that I think to a lot of people looked amazing because I had that part-time status, and I will always be appreciative of that. But even that, I just had to find something that I had to step away from it so that I could figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so that is kind of the long answer to how I did that. And I realized I had a lot of really interesting offers that sort of came my way right after I quit, almost like the day I quit. And I didn't really know if that's what I wanted to do or be. And so I kind of forced myself to take a time out. And I'm really glad I did, because now looking even just a few months out from it, the things that I thought I would have really wanted to do, what I really wanted was just to change from what I was doing. Like, things that seemed really attractive to me seemed attractive because it was different from what I was stuck in. And so when I don't have the pressure of that anymore, I can objectively look at those things and be like, you know, that's really not it either. So I'm kind of still sitting in that space trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. And I have the luxury of time to figure that out.
That's an awesome place and space to be in.
So it was hard though, I'm not gonna lie. Like,
Yeah.
I got done Thrive and sort of pulled myself back together. I don't know that I would have had the mental clarity or the courage to make that. It was a truly life-altering decision. But I was, again, not to sound sappy, but I felt like if I can do this program and I can like go, if I can find myself again mentally and physically, then I can do this too. I can start over. So.
Agreed. I think that goes back to something that I've always like said. So in my whole life, people have always asked me like, what are you training for? Like, you know what I mean? Because with my workouts and my eat so regimentedly and blah, 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 blah. This goes right along with you. Like, I think for me in my mind, I'm training for life, because if I can do all of these things, like if I can work out the way I work out, if I can be as regimented with my eating, and I can, you know, maintain my physical presence and whatever, then there's nothing like job wise or whatever that I can't handle. So I think you got to that same place. And so that's a really awesome place to be in.
Yeah. It was hard though, because, you know, there, like, I didn't realize there's a lot of people who are people invest in you in different ways. So like, I didn't realize that it would be hard on my parents for me to step away from that, because they were very proud of what I did. And I also came from a background where my parents, to just quit a job without something else lined up was unheard of. Like, you just worked because there was no other option but working.
Yeah.
And so I had to basically tell them, listen, I've been in school, college, graduate school, doing this. I've been working for 30 years, and I just need to take a break and breathe, because, you know, this isn't working anymore. And it was hard for them though, because it meant a lot to them what I had accomplished in life. So we had to have some really honest conversations about that. They're okay with it now, but my mom just cried when I told her. And I felt, you know, I felt bad about that.
Well, but good for you. I mean, it's okay to feel bad about something, but good for you for not living your life based on what your parents, quote unquote, wanted for you or thought was the right thing for you to do. So I think a lot of people do that. A lot of us get stuck in this like persona of who everybody else wants us to be, and we forget about what we want to be. And, you know, good for you for not losing sight of that. Awesome. Good answers.
Oh my gosh.
I know. We got any other questions? What do we got in there?
No other questions. but just good comments, just saying good stuff. But yeah, no questions though.
All right, well, let me ask some questions then. Let me ask some. Let's have a little bit of fun. Let's learn a little bit about you. So, where are you originally from?
I was born on the Oregon coast, but my dad, I was kind of the corporate version of an Army brat. So we moved a lot when I was a kid. So I've lived just about everywhere, every zone of America you can imagine I have lived. We moved all the
So
time.
you were born in Oregon, though?
Yes.
Did you know that Christy is also from Oregon? Your friend?
Bird?
Yeah.
No, she's not.
Yeah. She's
No.
from Oregon. She thinks she's from somewhere like Northern California, but we looked it up.
She's from Lake County.
She's actually from Oregon, though. She was born and raised in Oregon. So that's just another little thing you guys have in common that you didn't even know about.
I don't know how I missed that all these years.
Well, you know, that's what I'm kind of like. I'm a bit of like Geraldo Rivera with the beard, and you know, maybe a little Barbara Walters. Like I bring stuff out of people. They just, you know, you don't even know what's happening. So you lived a little bit of everywhere. What was your first like jobby job, like you know, high school or whatever it was?
My first job, I worked for a top 40 radio station. And when I was in high school, we lived just outside of Seattle. And so my first job, my marketing teacher got me. And we spent the summer driving around in a motorhome, doing radio promotions and events and going to concerts and screwing around, calling it work.
Wow.
How
How old were you?
I did that a couple summers. So I was like 15 through 18.
Nice. So was it like you would have been like a marketing type person sort of for this radio station?
Yeah, every year they kind of set it up as an internship, and if you were in this particular teacher's marketing class and did his marketing program, you could work. He set it up. He had so many slots you could work for the radio station over the summer, and you just basically helped them do all of their summer promotions. So whatever the radio station was, whatever they were attached to, they would send us to different locations. I mean, I'd spend a day in a grocery store handing out Sunkist. We did a fair, it's called Sea Fair in Seattle, where they have the hydroplane boats and the Blue Angels, and we would work that for a week. We worked various fairs, different concerts, all kinds of stuff, and we handed out t-shirts and that kind of stuff.
What kind of radios, like what kind of music, what kind of radios?
Top 40.
Top 40?
Top 40.
All right. Were you a music person, or did you just not care about any of that, or did you like that aspect of it?
I mean, I was a high schooler, so whatever was on the radio was my jam, because back then that's really all we had was the radio. And if you wanted to make a tape, you'd have to like listen for the song and then hit record really fast. And you know, it was really back in the olden days. But yeah, no, it was good. But it was also Seattle in the early 90s, so that grunge scene was just starting. So yeah, it was. I liked Top 40, but I also was there when Nirvana was born, so I tended a little bit to the grungy stuff. I had a lot of flannel shirts.
Really?
Yeah.
That is...
But I did not like being dirty, so my hair was always done. Like I could not let my hair get lank or coconut. So I was like clean grunge.
Yeah, you're like preppy grunge probably. Yeah. You're like, yeah, I don't want to wear patchouli and smell weird all the time.
No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Okay. Nirvana was a band.
Yes.
Yeah, 90s Seattle. Just Google it when we're done.
Okay. For them, I am a fan, but I'll Google them up.
What year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated in 1993.
Me too.
I think we are the same age.
What?
Yeah.
I did not know that. No wonder I like you. That's so awesome. 1993. I love it.
Yep.
Where did you actually graduate from, the high school in Seattle? That's where you gravitated back to?
Yeah, my dad, so basically once I got to the middle of junior high, we had moved back to the Seattle area. So we literally went Oregon, Washington, Mississippi, Wisconsin, back to Seattle. And then my dad told the company he wasn't going to move until I graduated from high school. So I got to do junior high and high school in the same, it was like a suburb of Seattle. So yes, I graduated from the same place.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, when did you know that you wanted to go to law school? Like, when did you make that decision? Early on, or?
Well, I got to the end of college and everybody either had decided that they had a career they wanted to do or they were going on to grad school. And I didn't know 100% what I wanted to do, but I always grew up with my dad telling me, if you go to law school, you can do anything with that degree. And also when I was a kid, I used to watch LA Law and I was obsessed with Susan Day's character. Do you remember she had the blonde bob and she dated Jimmy Smits? And so between those two things, I thought that's what I was going to do.
I think the only show, like the only law show I watched was Ally McBeal.
Ah! With the dancing baby. Yeah.
The Dancing Baby, and did you watch Ally McBeal?
I did.
Yeah.
I thought when you got to be a lawyer, you could wear skirts that short. That was a lie.
Yeah, not true.
No.
Wasn't Portia de Rossi in that show? Like that's before
Yes.
her and Ellen got together and the whole 9 yards. Like, yeah, that show created a lot of confusion for me. So 1993. This means that we have some of the same. So did you watch 90210 growing up?
I did.
Okay, good. Who was your favorite character in 90210 and why?
Oh, Dylan, hands down.
Me too. Just a couple of girls chatting.
Yeah, well, first of all, he was actually 30 when he was filming it. So he was like way cooler than the average high schooler. And then it just made, when you went to school the next day, it just made like all the boys look deficient. But yes, Dylan, he had the best hair. He was literally 30 and he had a good car.
And he lived alone, basically. That's what I used to baffle me. I'm like, Mom, how do I get my own place? And it just never. She never was game for it. But yeah, he lived alone.
Yep.
Never had any parental supervision.
Nope.
Coolest cat you know. Mysterious. I'm basically describing myself right now. I basically just laid out the script for. Oh God, so many memories. God rest his soul.
Oh, I know. God.
Too soon. Too soon.
You know, I don't feel old very often, but when that happened, I felt like in that moment, I was like, oh shit, I'm maybe a little bit old. Dylan died.
Dylan McKay went down. Sat there.
How did he die?
He had a stroke.
Yeah, stroke. Probably related to extracurricular activities if I'm guessing. Here was my problem with that show is like I always tried to equate like the girls on the show like to like the girls I went to school with. It just wasn't. We didn't have that. Like we didn't have Kelly Kapowski and is it Kelly Kapowski? Is that Saved by the Bell?
That was Saved by the Bell.
Saved by the Bell. What's her name? Kelly.
Oh. Wasn't it? It was Brent. It was the twins, Jason.
Yeah, it was Brendan Walsh.
Walsh.
Was their last name. Dylan McKay.
Anybody know?
Andrea Zuckerman.
She was like 35. That is my least favorite character. I never understood.
Because she didn't fit. It was
annoying and she was old. I never got
her. Bobby Jane said.
What Bobby Jane said?
Kelly Taylor.
Kelly Taylor, that's it. Yeah, Andrea never made sense to me. And she just didn't fit in. She was 47 years old. She wore overalls pretty much every episode. It just never had good hair.
No.
So many things just didn't fit. I don't know. It just it wasn't a good play for me.
I had a friend, and Thursday nights we would go. She had a really cool. Her mom had like a cool basement, and it was all set up like what you call a man cave now. And we would go, and that was like viewing time.
I loved 90210. Probably one of the greatest shows of like that 1992, 3, 1-ish, whatever era that was out there.
It was pretty formative. Yeah.
Have you ever seen an episode of the real 90210?
No, I've never seen the real one. I've only seen like when they came out with the second version of it.
No, don't watch that.
Oh, I watched. That was like one of my favorite shows.
No.
Yeah. I've seen every single episode.
Go with the classic.
Okay.
Do yourself a favor. Netflix the classic. I think you'll find out. I bet you're a Steve. I bet you like Steve.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to be a Steve. What was Steve's last name? Somebody help me out here. For some reason, I like first and last names.
I don't know. He just had a lot of forehead. He always had too much forehead for me. It was just.
He was definitely way too uptight for me. Like he was always like too intense.
Can I look him up?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Just put Steve, put 90210 Steve. I'm going to see if I can come up with it before you get there.
Sanders.
Sanders, damn it. Damn it.
I think I'd be a Steve fan.
I just feel like you're a Steve guy. That's just my gut feeling. Steve, maybe Brendan, but I don't know. I don't think you and Brenda would have got along. I don't think she would have liked you very much. So.
Holly just said Steve is the male Andrea.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, but I think they played his character a little better because he was a rich kid, had the red Corvette or whatever that was that he drove. Supposed to be like the jockey kind of like dude on the show, but he was definitely not a great character by any means. So anyway, enough 902 enough chatter. Marissa, any questions on the side? I don't know what time it is. I don't have, my faculties are completely gone.
3:30 right now.
Okay, let's take a couple more since we remember the late start.
Celeste asks, what is Kirsten's ideal day?
Ooh.
Like on vacation, or just like an average day that turns out to be perfect?
Let's do both. What's an average, just normal day, and then like what would be like best case scenario? Like, like your day, like you get to do whatever you want.
Okay, my ideal day, I would get up and work out because I would feel really good about myself when I was done. And oh gosh, it's just a regular day. I'm gonna pick a weekend day because weekdays are a little boring. A weekend day would get up, have breakfast with my family, come up with like something to do together, whether it's a game. I'd love to be outside for a while. Like I have a garden and I'd probably spend some time out in my yard, and then we would do something together, whether it's a game or a movie, and then dinner outside by the pool, something off the grill would be. I'm not like a huge crowd person. I've always kind of liked to be at home. I'm a homebody. So that is a perfect, just sort of regular weekend day for me. But if I'm on vacation, my day begins in a nice hotel. I don't love hotels, but if I'm at a hotel, it's going to be a nice hotel.
Where would you be right now if you go somewhere? Where'd you go right now? Go.
I'd go to Santa Barbara. It's just that's where we got married, and we have a couple of sort of favorite haunts there. So I'd be at the end of the Spanish Garden in Santa Barbara. And then I know where we'd be for dinner. We'd be at Zaytun, which is this sort of, it's like Lebanese, Middle Eastern outside courtyard, amazing restaurant, and walk around for the day, shop on State Street, pick up some stuff from a house. There'd be some interior decorating activity involved in some way, shape, or form. Awesome. But something like that with my husband.
I like that. Marissa will watch the kids. Let's make it happen. I just set up the day for you right there. We don't want to leave anybody hanging. Did anybody else have any questions that we didn't jam?
Alyssa asked, did you watch the OC?
That I did, but I honestly, that was later. That wasn't. I don't think those were contemporaneous. And
can I get a clarification here? Are we talking the OC, like the reality, like OC with Kristen Cavallari and what was the girl's name? Has her own clothing line, Lauren Conrad. Or are we talking about the OC with Nisha Barton? Because I need to know. I mean, I watched them both, but I just need to know what we're talking about.
The one that you're talking about, the first one, that's Laguna Beach.
Laguna Beach. You sure?
Yeah.
Is that called OC?
No.
Okay, never mind. Carry on then. Okay, so
I watched it a little bit, but not with the same dedication as 90210. After high school, I really became a non-TV person. I didn't watch TV very much because I was crazy busy in college and law school, and I only recently have started watching a little bit of television again. So I had a huge, probably a 20-year dry spell of television. But There are some things out there I like now, but it has to be smart TV. Like it has to be, whoever wrote it has to be super smart. Because the joke.
I watched the OC for one reason. The only reason I watched it is because I have this weird thing. I like to see like the underdog guy get like the cute girl, and I always thought, what's the girl's name that was in that? Rachel Bilson.
Yeah.
So I thought Rachel Bilson was cute, and she definitely out of the dude's league. The kid with the curly hair, I don't know his name. You know what I'm talking about?
Is his name Adam or something? No.
I don't even remember. Yeah, everybody knows what I'm saying though. And I love the show because I always wanted them to like be boyfriend and girlfriend. I don't know why. I did. I'm a weird guy. And I like their house. I mean, everything about it was good. Like I could live there. Like I always wanted to be the messed up kid who got brought into the family. But I was never like, I don't know. I was always afraid to get in trouble. So never worked out. Never went to juvie or anything. But I'm always like, if I ever went to juvie, if I come out of juvie and my mom's like, you can't come here. And then I thought that's where I would end up, is a place like that.
At least you had.
In my mind, right.
Yeah, always ready.
It makes sense. Yeah, always be ready. You never know.
Kirsten, where'd you go to school? Really quick, sorry.
For undergrad, I went to Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington.
Go Bulldogs, right?
And after 4 years in Spokane, which is about 2 hours from the Canadian border, it's really cold in the winter, I went to law school at Pepperdine, which is in Malibu, and that's how I ended up in California, actually. I had planned to go home, and then I just never did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Pepperdine, something the wave, some kind of wave. Blue wave? Wave? It's some kind of wave. There's a wave involved. I know that. I know my mascots.
Yeah, I ended up at 2 WCC schools to my dad's chagrin because they don't have football. They have no football teams in the WCC. So I never got that college football experience. I was kind of felt bummed about that, but it had other perks. So I had a pretty good basketball team.
Did Gonzaga have a really good basketball team when you were there?
It was getting really good, but it was sort of like a local secret. But it's crazy now because they have this big new stadium, which isn't even that big. But when I was a kid, when I was there, you could literally decide like 2 minutes before the game that you wanted to go watch the game. You just walk over, with your student ID. There was always like room to sit, and now like the kids camp out and everything.
Oh yeah.
And, it was always played in the winter. It's freezing cold outside, so I can't imagine camping in a tent in like minus 10 degrees to go see a basketball game. But it was it was still super fun. The players were excellent, and I just remember it was very hometowny. Like when you would hit so many, or they would hit so many free throws, like if they hit 10 or more in a game, then Wendy's would give the whole student body free hamburgers. So you could leave the game and just like walk over and get free food, which is every college student's dream.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was fun. It was starting to get really good when I was there.
Now, when you went to Pepperdine, did you live in Malibu?
I did. The first year I lived in an on-campus apartment across from the law school, which was really nice. It had an ocean view, which is crazy. And then I rented a guest house up across from Zuma Beach the last 2 years I was in law school. Wow. So it burned down, and I was really sad because when they had the fires last year, my little house burned down.
Oh.
Did you go from there? Where'd you when you left Pepperdine or you left Malibu? Where'd you go? Here.
Well, I went home for a little while I took the bar exam, so I stayed in Malibu all that summer, studied for the bar exam, took the bar exam. Then I went home. My parents at the time were living in Seattle again. They had moved back to Seattle, and just waited to get my bar results. And then once I had them, I had student loans I had to pay for, and I needed a job. So I just came back down to California and started interviewing with any DA's office that was hiring, and got myself a job.
So you knew you wanted to live in California, so that's why you took the California bar. I mean, or is that?
Actually, my plan was to take the California bar and then take the Washington bar, but I was so stressed out and scarred from the experience of the California bar exam that I decided, you know what, I'll do that in like a year, and that was a mistake. I should have just jumped back into it and taken the other bar exam. didn't work out as a mistake, but I never ended up taking that bar exam again because you should just keep going. It's too hard after a few years to go back and.
Let me ask you this, because I mean, everybody says this, but I don't know. I mean, you're a fairly honest person, and I feel like I can get a real answer from you. Everybody says that like the California and the New York bars are like supposed to be harder than the other bars. You think there's truth to that? I mean, I know you haven't taken them physically, but have you heard the same thing, and do you believe that that might be true?
Yes, well, California and New York bars, I think, were actually a day longer than the other states' exams, and you can kind of tell by the pass-fail rate. But they're specifically designed that way because California and New York have basically the hottest market for lawyers. Okay. Everyone wants to be a California lawyer or a New York lawyer. And so the reason that those bars are as hard as they are is designed to actually keep people out.
Now, when they say, help us understand for somebody who's never taken the bar, how could they make it harder? Is it based on just like the volume of questions, or like the questions are just substantially more detailed or more technical or more, or they don't give as much leniency? Like, what is it that makes it harder?
Well, the California bar exam had 12 subjects, and it also had a middle day where it's called it's like a multi-state, it's a multiple choice test that takes all day long, and it covers like basically everything across the country. Everybody takes that. That's usually where the bar exam ends. But California has an extra day of essays, and then they had at the time, I think they might be changing it now, but at the time they had, it was like a performance exam where you were given basically a closed universe and a problem to solve, and you had to basically write a legal memo as though you were working in a law firm based on what they gave you. And you had 3 hours, you had to do 2. You had to do one the first day and then one the third day. And so your mornings were essays on topics, and you didn't know what topics you were going to get. So it was going to be one of 12, which is basically everything you learned in 3 years of law school, you had to be prepared to test on those days. And then the afternoons were these writing exams where you had to show that you had the ability to take whatever they gave you and solve the problem in a written memo. And so a lot of states did not have that component. And I think that testing was just harder, but it's by design.
Yeah, okay, that makes total sense. It seems like that last part would be like a subjective grading opportunity as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't like your hair that much, so therefore, you don't really, I mean, that's what I would do it on.
Well, 2 days of it are subjective grading because they were hand graded by humans because they were essays. And then the only thing that was a true objective test was that middle day.
Okay, and everybody, that's standard from no matter what state you're in?
Yeah.
Okay, so the subjective parts are the parts that that states themselves can like not manipulate, but add or take away from or do all those types of things.
Right. I just got itchy. I just got like sweaty thinking about it.
And it doesn't matter what kind of law you want to practice. Everybody takes the same bar.
Right.
So you theoretically not theoretically, but you have to like know like full spectrum of law, like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of enough to be able to. But then when you pass the bar, like you're not really, I mean, I'm going to use the word qualified. Yes, you're qualified, but you couldn't pass the bar and the next day go into court and litigate a human trafficking case. Or you could.
No, you mean you'd be allowed to because you'd be licensed, but
you wouldn't have the skills.
You also then have ethical rules that say you can't take a case unless you're competent or can become competent in the time it takes to do the case. So you can't, it's all designed to not hurt your client. So it would be like you could do it, but if you messed up, that could be the end of your career. But so most people, that's why they go into practice, they start small, they learn an area, or they go in with a firm that teaches them a specific practice area.
And that was kind of a silly,
everything.
Yeah, it was a silly example for me to give, but I wanted to get like, I thought that would be the answer. So how long after you pass the bar and you like say, hey, I'm going to do this kind of law, like when did you feel like, I know what I'm doing? Like, you know, I mean, I think I got this. Like, does it take a while? I mean, because it seems like there's a lot of stuff you need to know.
My first day as a DA, I literally thought that I had gone to the wrong school because nothing I learned had anything to do with what I was doing at work. Like I literally felt like I was speaking a foreign language and I had been at school for a different language. And then, so you basically, you learn all this general stuff and then you get into your and then you really learn what you do for a living. So it probably took me about a year before I felt like I got this. And even then I still didn't know very much. I was a fairly quick learner, and so I didn't know enough to be terrified. So I just did whatever I took every challenge I could take and just went and did it. And so I learned pretty quickly, but it still took a while.
It's probably good that you didn't know enough to even know you didn't know enough. Like you were just like, oh, okay, I'll take that on.
Right. When you don't know how badly you can fail, it's not as scary to try something new.
No, it really, opens it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Marissa, do we have anything left before we let?
We have 2.
Let's go quickly. What do we got?
Christy says, ask her about shooting the boot.
Shooting the boot?
The boot.
Oh, the boot.
Yeah.
Say, what's the boot? Okay, shooting a boot. Can you tell a boot shooting story?
I don't think I shot the boot. Could she clarify, is she referring to a rugby incident? That wasn't me. Any other questions?
Holly should ask, what sports were you into in college?
I played rugby at Gonzaga for 4 years, and it was actually a double season sport. So we played fall till it froze, and then spring when the ground was soft enough to not die. And I picked that up, and my roommate hated me. I was inadvertently placed in an upperclassman dorm when I was a freshman, and I didn't know that. It was just a mistake. And my roommate was really angry that she had a freshman for a roommate, and so she spent the first 3 or 4 weeks of college trying to get me to move. I was just happy to be there. I didn't know any different. And I thought she was a little standoffish, but I was like, you're going to be my friend. And so she just kept inviting me to stuff she thought I'd hate. So she took me to rugby practice thinking that like the team would just beat the shit out of me, especially since I showed up in like full makeup and everything. And I just loved it. So I kept playing and I was like, this is the greatest. And you could tell she was just like, why aren't you moving yet? And we actually ended up being really good friends, but she fully admits that she was like trying to run me off the first few weeks. But that's how I started playing, is because she took me out to practice, hoping I would basically be physically like debilitated afterwards and decide to move out.
What did you like about rugby? Like what was the draw?
It was the best physical workout I had ever had. We practiced 2 hours a day, but it was fun because there was a ball involved. Like it was the running of soccer, but it wasn't just chasing a ball back and forth. Like I like to watch my kids play soccer, but soccer to me is kind of boring because it's pretty low scoring and you can spend your whole day just literally running back and forth. Yeah. And there were a lot of rules to rugby, so I was kind of intrigued by that. It took me like months to learn all the rules, and it was fun because it has a real contact component, so you can just go out and like every frustration you ever had is done by the end of hour 2 because you've just sort of left it all out there.
We're like in the scrum, where was your favorite place to be? You see that? Jay, hold on a minute, can somebody give Jay a high five throwing out a little rugby terminology here? Am I right? The scrum?
That is correct.
Take me with you, people. You see you see the value I bring? Random shit. Test me. I know about, there's something in here about everything. I don't know what you did. I don't know why you did this to me, but he gave me so many tools.
I actually ended up, when I first started playing, they put me in basically the back line, which is that weird diagonal line you'll see of people. And I wasn't fast enough to play the fun positions in that line, so I never made it either to the very front or the very end. And then eventually, because I was one of the shorter people on the team, I actually ended up in the front row of the scrum, and I was what they call the hooker. I had a great bumper sticker too.
That makes sense. Yeah. Now, just so you guys know, the scrum, if you ever watch rugby, is like when both teams like almost like interlock here, and then they call him a referee. I don't know what they call him a ref.
Yeah.
Whatever. Whoever the guy, they roll the ball like in the middle, and then it's like chaos, and whoever gets the ball comes out, and that's how they go. That's what the scrum is.
So that was basically after the first probably season, I moved up to that and I played. So when you did your little thing with the fingers, if you only had 3 fingers, I was that finger.
Now, is it dark? Is it, am I saying nasty? Like, is it rough in there? Like, is
Yes.
people like, I mean, is like stick eye gouging you, throat punching?
No, they can't. Everybody's hands are bound behind them, so there's nothing that can happen. Like, nobody has free hands to do that to you in that particular formation. But they're, back when I played, you could still have titanium cleats. And so we buy soccer cleats with a metal toe guard, but take out the plastic and screw in a titanium cleat. And so if you can get your feet free to swing under, like the other person, my counterpart, you could swing under to grab the ball, but if you couldn't get the ball, then you could use your cleat to hook the other person's leg.
Whoa, hook the leg. What?
Man.
Because nobody can see under there. It's kind of like water polo. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens under the water that nobody can see. That's really kind of mean. But what I really liked about it was after the game, like, that's what probably the most fun thing about rugby is that after the game, it is a tradition that both teams get together and have a drink up. Like, there is a party after the game where you mandatorily socialize with your opponent. So whatever you do on the field, you know you're going to have to basically hang out with that person for several drunken hours afterwards. So it's kind of a little bit of a built-in honor system or police system, but it's really fun. The social aspect of it was awesome.
That is cool. And you played all 4 years while you were at Gonzaga.
I did. We eventually, like, I think halfway through or the 3rd year, the men's rugby team got kicked off campus for naked activities, and so they didn't want to recharter us. So we had to move our practices, but we kept playing. It was all the men's team fault.
It always is.
Yeah.
You put your pants on. Do you have any photos of you in the rugby get up and everything, like playing and everything? I'd love to see
I
them.
might have a couple. When I was moving, actually back from law school, my car was broken into, and a lot of, like, all the stuff I had compiled was stolen. So I might have a couple photos somewhere. My mom might have a couple, but most of
because you were a famous rugby player and they wanted to take all of your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, why they needed Melissa Etheridge and Sarah McLachlan's and Nirvana CDs and, like, a bunch of flannel shirts. It was a real haul, but, you know, I had packed everything that I owned in a couple boxes, and I didn't come out with very much of it. But my mom might have a few.
Okay, if we can get our hands on one of those, I know that I know I speak for everybody when I say I'd like to see you maybe in a little bit of a ruckus.
I will try. I think most of the ones I have are from like the costumed events afterwards.
We'll take what we can get.
So they're not actually maybe rugby uniforms, but they might be a team costume of some kind. Holly can tell you what that's about.
We're not that picky. Did Holly play rugby too?
No, but so there's a massive rugby tournament every year in Missoula, Montana, and it's called Maggot Fest. And there's, like, teams from Canada, all over the country, men's, women's teams that come, and it's like 3 days of sports and debauchery. And it's held at the fairgrounds, and so there's a large costume party that's held every May, and it's a lot of fun. And so your team has to have a theme. So I
didn't know rugby players are so much fun.
Oh, they're way fun. They're way fun.
Last question. Do you watch? I mean, if rugby was on now, would you watch it?
I do.
Do you have a favorite team?
I mean, it's kind of cliche, but I've always enjoyed watching the All Blacks.
Yeah.
So, because they really are. And then when I was playing, there's a huge Samoan component in the rugby community, and so there were several teams that would be like, they would be Samoans, but they would be from Canada or from Utah actually, and they were amazing to watch play. Their physical fitness and just they're so muscular and strong.
They're grown. Yeah, they're grown differently in the Samoan culture. They're abnormally large and strong, and yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, super muscular. I heard a guy's leg break when he was tackled by a Samoan player. That was horrible, but they're, like, really fun to watch play.
When I was a kid, I thought those Girl Scout cookies were Samoans. And I thought if I ate enough of those that I would get that same level of beef. Not true. Don't try that.
No, not the same.
And I don't even think that's what they're called. I think they're
I think Samoas, I think.
Samoas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honest mistake. And I was probably just hungry. Probably wanted a snack. So thanks for joining us today. Do you want to leave any parting words? Would you like, I mean, I give you guys closing arguments. What would you like to tell the jury before we leave?
Just that I miss all you guys, and I really, really miss being able to physically be together and work out at 5 a.m. That's kind of anchors my day, and I'm doing the best I can here at home with it, but it's not the same, and I'm hoping that we can all be back together soon.
I know, me too. We will, you know what, I have a really strong feeling it's going to be sooner than later. I'm being very, very positive and optimistic about that, but let's all keep our fingers crossed. And don't go anywhere. I'm going to cancel our little Facebook Live here, and then I'm going to give some parting words to you with just nobody on.
Okay.
Hold tight.